When 12 of the world's richest people gather at a secret mansion hidden in the Montana mountains, they think they control the future of technology. For 3 days, they deliberately ignore the famous billionaire Elon Musk, treating him like an unwanted guest despite inviting him to their exclusive Horizon Summit. What they don't realize is that Elon has already discovered their dangerous plan called Operation Nexus, a scheme to control all digital communications worldwide. While they dismiss his ideas and whisper behind his back, Elon is quietly working on something that will change everything. As the powerful group tries to frame him for theft and destroy his companies, Elon must find allies and evidence before it's too late. But when he finally speaks at the final roundtable, what he reveals will completely shock everyone in the room. Will Elon's one statement be enough to stop 12 of the most powerful people on Earth? And what is the mysterious bigger project he hints at that could make today's revelation look small in comparison? Watch till the end to find out. The private jet touched down on the secluded airstrip, nestled between towering Montana pines. Elon Musk gazed out the window at Blackwood Estate, its stone towers and sprawling grounds more reminiscent of European royalty than American new money. He hadn't particularly wanted to attend the Horizon Summit. These gatherings of the ultra-wealthy typically produced more champagne consumption than actual innovation. But his communications team had insisted on the networking opportunity. "Mr. Musk, we've arrived," his assistant said, already gathering his minimal luggage. Elon preferred traveling light, one carry-on with essentials and his laptop. Unlike the other attendees who would arrive with entourages and multiple wardrobes, he came with ideas that couldn't be packed in designer suitcases. As he descended the jet stairs, Elon noticed there was no welcoming committee, despite the fact that 3 other private jets were already parked nearby. Just a single stone-faced driver holding a small sign with Musk scrawled in hasty penmanship. Not exactly the red carpet treatment. "Welcome to Blackwood Estate, sir," the driver said without a hint of welcome in his voice. "I'll take you to the main house." The winding driveway cut through manicured gardens where gardeners trimmed hedges into perfect geometric shapes. Everything here was controlled, Elon thought. Nature itself bent to human will and wealth. He preferred the wild, unpredictable energy of his rocket launches and factory floors. The car pulled up to the mansion's grand entrance, where a woman in her 50s stood checking items off a tablet. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled into a tight bun, her posture military straight. "Vivian Blackwood," the driver announced quietly. The hostess inherited the Blackwood tech empire from her father and tripled its value. Elon nodded. He'd never met Vivian personally, though they'd circled the same industry for decades. Her company specialized in government contracts, the opposite of his consumer-focused enterprises. As he approached, Vivian looked up from her tablet, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly from polite interest to cool assessment. She extended a hand that felt cold despite the warm afternoon. "Mr. Musk, you found us without trouble." Not a question, not quite a welcome. "Your mountain hideaway isn't exactly hard to spot from the air," Elon replied with a small smile. "Vivian didn't return it." "Indeed. Your room is in the East Wing. The welcome reception begins at 6 in the Grand Hall. Business casual." She turned back to her tablet before he could respond, then called out warmly, "Marcus, you made it." Elon turned to see a tall man with steel-gray hair emerging from a Rolls-Royce. Marcus Sterling, oil magnate, and old money fixture on every richest people list since the 1990s. "Vivian, darling." Marcus embraced her like family, kissing both cheeks. "Another year, another horizon. You've outdone yourself with the venue." Well, the family estate seemed appropriate for our 20th summit. The original 12 members, all together again, plus a few new faces. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Elon without interest. A staff member materialized beside Elon. "Sir, I'll show you to your room." As they entered the mansion's cavernous foyer, Elon couldn't help noticing the portraits of Blackwood patriarchs lining the walls. Stern faces looking down on visitors with the same assessing gaze Vivian had. Given him old money, old power, old thinking. The kind of establishment that had laughed at electric cars and commercial spaceflight until he'd proven them wrong. "Your room, sir," the staff member said, opening a door to reveal a tasteful but noticeably smaller suite than the grand accommodations Elon had glimpsed through other open doors along the hallway. After freshening up, Elon made his way down to the reception. The grand hall lived up to its name. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, illuminating rare art pieces and guests draped in quiet wealth. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than most people's monthly food budgets. Elon grabbed a sparkling water and surveyed the room. Small clusters of people had already formed, conversations flowing easily among those who clearly met regularly in boardrooms and on yachts. No one approached him, though he caught several glances, some curious, others dismissive. He recognized most faces from magazine covers and news reports. Daphne Zhao, the pharmaceutical executive whose company had patent rights to several life-saving drugs, laughed with animated hands as she spoke with two tech billionaires. Across the room, Vivian Blackwood held court with a group of the oldest members, occasionally nodding toward a digital display showing what appeared to be investment projections. Elon approached a less crowded area where a man stood alone studying a Renaissance painting. "Beautiful brushwork," Elon commented. The man turned, surprise registering briefly before his expression smoothed. "Yes, a Caravaggio, one of Vivian's recent acquisitions." "Elon Musk," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "Harrison Wells," the man replied with a brief handshake. "Quantum computing. Interesting field. I've been following developments in—" "Harrison," a voice interrupted. "There you are. Vivian's asking for you. Something about the Singapore investment." Harrison nodded to the newcomer, gave Elon a perfunctory smile, and walked away without another word. The interrupting man didn't acknowledge Elon at all before following Harrison. This pattern repeated throughout the evening. Conversation stopped when he approached. People excused themselves rapidly after minimal interactions. By the time dinner was announced, it was clear that despite being on every influential person list for years, Elon was not part of this particular club. At the massive dining table, he found himself seated near the far end, beside a young woman who introduced herself as a climate scientist, the only non-billionaire at the table, apparently invited to give a presentation the next day. At least she seemed willing to engage in actual conversation. During the first course, Elon overheard fragments of discussion from further up the table where Vivian sat with Marcus and Daphne. Operation Nexus timeline has been accelerated, Marcus was saying quietly. Research team says the prototype exceeds expectations, Daphne added. Vivian nodded. Then we proceed as planned. The implications for market control are... She glanced down the table and noticed Elon's attention. Her sentence died abruptly. Something interesting, Mr. Musk? She called out, drawing all eyes to him. The table fell silent. I couldn't help. Overhearing about Operation Nexus, Elon said casually. Sounds intriguing. The silence stretched uncomfortably before Marcus laughed. The sound forced. Just boring energy sector talk. Nothing that would interest a man focused on sending people to Mars. Daphne smiled thinly. Speaking of which, how is the latest rocket testing going? Still experiencing those troublesome explosions? Several guests chuckled. The climate scientist beside Elon shifted uncomfortably. Each failure teaches us something new, Elon replied evenly. That's how innovation works. Indeed, Vivian said, her tone making clear she was ending this line of conversation. Now, about the carbon capture proposal. The conversation pivoted, smoothly, deliberately excluding him. Elon returned to his meal, but his mind was working. Operation Nexus, a prototype, market control, and a room full of the world's most powerful people who very clearly didn't want him hearing about it. As the night wound down, Elon wandered through the mansion's labyrinthine halls, processing the evening's subtle hostilities. He paused when he heard voices from a partially open door. Having him here complicates things, a woman's voice, Vivian's, said sharply. He's too public to exclude entirely, a man responded. Better to keep potential disruptions where we can see them. Just make sure he remains uninvolved, Vivian replied. Too much is at stake. Elon backed away silently, mind racing. Whatever was happening at the Horizon Summit, he wasn't supposed to be part of it. But now he was certain of one thing. Something significant was being planned in this isolated mansion. And for some reason, the 12 most powerful people in the world saw him as a threat to those plans. Elon retreated to his room, the conversation replaying in his mind. He'd built his career on disrupting industries. Perhaps that alone made him unwelcome in a group dedicated to maintaining their power. Still, something about the secrecy surrounding Operation Nexus felt different. More deliberate, more dangerous. Sleep came fitfully that night. By morning, Elon had decided on a simple approach. Observe, gather information, and be ready to act when necessary. It was the same strategy he'd used when entering the automotive industry against all warnings. Watch, learn, then move decisively. Breakfast was served in a sunlit conservatory overlooking the estate's private lake. Elon filled his plate with fruit and eggs, noticing how conversations hushed briefly as he passed various tables before resuming. With forced casualness, he chose an empty table, pulling out his phone to review emails while eating. Mind if I join you? Elon looked up to see the climate scientist from dinner, Dr. Elena Ray, according to her name badge. Please, he gestured to the chair across from him. Quite a collection of power in this room, she commented, stirring honey into her tea. Combined worth more than the GDP of most nations. And they all seem to know each other very well, Elon replied. Elena nodded. Most have been attending these summits for years. This is my first, and likely last, invitation. I'm here to present research on climate technology investments. Then I'll be whisked away before the real discussions begin. The real discussions? She lowered her voice. That's how Vivian described it. The presentations and roundtables are apparently just a warm-up. The actual decisions happen behind closed doors. Before Elon could ask more, a chime sounded through the room. Vivian stood at the center, impeccably dressed in a tailored gray suit that matched the silver streaks in her dark hair. Ladies and gentlemen, our morning roundtable begins in 15 minutes. Today's topic, Shaping Tomorrow, the Responsibility of Wealth. Please make your way to the conference center. The conference center proved to be a modern addition to the historic mansion, a glass and steel structure overlooking the mountains. Inside, a massive circular table dominated the room, each seat equipped with a personal screen and microphone. Journalists and photographers lined the walls, representing every major financial and technology publication. Elon found his assigned seat, noticing it was positioned almost directly opposite from Vivian's prominent place. A deliberate choice, he suspected, keeping him visible but distant. A distinguished man with silver temples took position at what was clearly the moderator's station. Welcome to our opening roundtable. I'm Jackson Hayes, former Treasury Secretary and your moderator for today's discussion. Cameras flashed as Hayes introduced the participants, giving each billionaire a glowing biography. When he reached Elon, his introduction was noticeably briefer. And of course, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. The discussion began with Hayes posing carefully scripted questions to selected participants. Marcus Sterling spoke at length about his foundation's work in developing nations. Daphne Zhao detailed her company's reduced-cost vaccination programs. Vivian described educational initiatives bringing technology to underserved communities. Elon raised his hand repeatedly as the conversation progressed, but Hayes's gaze seemed to slide past him each time, calling on others instead. After nearly an hour of being overlooked, Elon decided on a more direct approach. "If I might add something to that point," he interjected during a brief pause. Hayes frowned slightly at the interruption. "We have a queue for comments, Mr. Musk. Now, I believe Rohan Mehta had insights on sustainable banking practices." A well-dressed man across the table, the banking executive Hayes had just mentioned, smoothly took over, leaving Elon's intended comment hanging unspoken. This pattern continued throughout the morning. On the rare occasions Hayes reluctantly acknowledged him, Elon found himself cut off mid-thought, or had his comments reframed and diminished. When he suggested direct investment in public transportation innovation as a climate solution, Hayes quickly recharacterized it as interesting but impractical dreaming before moving to more grounded approaches. By the time the moderator announced a coffee break, Elon's frustration had hardened into certainty. This wasn't random inhospitality. The systematic exclusion felt coordinated, almost rehearsed. The attendees dispersed to refreshment tables set up around the perimeter of the room. Elon stood alone, watching the various power clusters form. Old money in one corner, tech giants in another, with Vivian moving between groups like a chess master positioning pieces. "Coffee, sir?" A young woman in staff uniform appeared beside him, offering a tray with a single cup. She was perhaps in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and alert eyes that seemed to be cataloging everything around her. "Thank you," Elon said, taking the cup. As he reached for it, she subtly slipped something else into his hand beneath the tray. A folded piece of paper. Her eyes met his briefly with clear intention, before she moved on to serve other guests. Elon turned slightly toward the wall, unfolding the note which contained just one hastily written line. "They're not what they seem. Be careful. Meet me by the kitchen doors at midnight." Zidi pocketed the note quickly, scanning the room to see if anyone had noticed the exchange. The serving girl, Z apparently, was now across the room, professionally expressionless as she collected empty cups. Curious, Elon tried to find her again after the break, following her path toward what he assumed were the service areas. Sit. He pushed through a door marked "Staff Only." He nearly collided with Vivian coming from the opposite direction. "Mr. Musk," she said, surprise quickly replaced by cool assessment. "This area is restricted to staff only. Guests have their own facilities. I was looking for the restroom," he lied smoothly. Of course, easy to get turned around in such a large building. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Allow me to direct you." As she led him back toward the conference room, Vivian added casually, "You know, Elon, the Horizon Summit has certain traditions, ways of doing things. Those who understand these unwritten rules find the experience much more rewarding." "I've never been much for following established rules," he replied. "Innovation happens at the boundaries, not in safe spaces." Vivian's expression hardened, momentarily, before her professional mask returned. "Just some friendly advice. The afternoon session begins in 5 minutes. I believe today's focus is on collaborative philanthropy, something that requires team players." The warning in her words was unmistakable. As she walked away, Elon glanced back toward the staff door, wondering about the mysterious Z and what she might know about the hidden agendas at work in Blackwood Estate. Whatever game these billionaires were playing, someone else was watching and had chosen to reach out to him. For the first time since arriving, Elon felt a step ahead rather than behind. Midnight couldn't come soon enough. The afternoon dragged on endlessly. During lunch, Elon found himself seated at the far end of the table, away from the core group of billionaires who clustered around Vivienne. His table mates included Elena, Ray, the climate scientist, and a thin, nervous-looking man who introduced himself as Theo Barnes. "You're the quiet one," Elon observed, noting that Theo hadn't spoken during the morning session despite occupying a seat close to Vivian's. Theo's fingers drummed anxiously on the tablecloth. "I prefer listening to talking. You learn more that way." His eyes constantly darted toward Vivian and Marcus, as if seeking approval or fearing disapproval. "What's your industry?" Elon asked. "Tech investments, early-stage companies." Theo's answers came in clipped sentences. "Nothing as flashy as rockets." Elena jumped in. "I've been meaning to ask about your solar initiatives, Mr. Musk. My research suggests decentralized power generation could—" "You'll have to excuse me," Theo interrupted, standing abruptly as Marcus Sterling glanced their way. "I need to prepare for the afternoon session." Elon watched him hurry away. "Not much of a conversationalist." "They're all acting strange," Elena whispered. "Before you arrived yesterday, everyone was relaxed. Now there's this tension whenever you're mentioned." Before Elon could respond, a chime signaled the end of lunch. They filed back into the conference center where the afternoon session began, focused on emerging technologies, supposedly Elon's area of expertise. Once again, Elon found himself systematically excluded. When he described potential breakthroughs in battery storage, Hayes thanked him briefly before asking Marcus Sterling to expand on that concept from a practical energy perspective. Marcus proceeded to present Elon's exact points as if they were his own insights, receiving thoughtful nods from around the table. "As I was saying earlier," Elon attempted to interject. "We've captured your contribution, Mr. Musk," Hayes said, smoothly. "Let's move on to quantum computing applications. Daphne?" The pattern continued until Elon stopped raising his hand altogether. Instead, he observed the room dynamics, noting how certain participants exchanged subtle glances before speaking, creating an almost choreographed conversation that excluded not just him, but anyone outside their inner circle. During a brief technology demonstration, Elon noticed Theo sliding something under the table to Vivian, a small device that resembled a thumb drive. The exchange was quick, professional, and clearly meant to be unobserved. When the session finally ended, Elon declined invitations to pre-dinner drinks, claiming a need to make business calls. Instead, he wandered the grounds, seeking fresh air and perspective. The estate's gardens extended for acres, eventually blending into natural woodland that climbed the surrounding mountains. "You shouldn't be out here alone." The voice startled him. Turning, Elon saw the serving girl from earlier, Z, emerging from a groundskeeper's shed. She'd changed from her uniform into jeans and a dark sweater. "You're early for our midnight meeting," Elon observed. Schedules changed. Security rotation was moved up. She glanced nervously toward the mansion. We don't have much time before they notice I'm gone. Who are you? Zara Chen. I'm not actually staff. She pulled out a press credential hidden beneath her sweater. I'm an investigative journalist with the Global Technology Review. I've been tracking the Nexus Consortium for months. The what? The real name of this gathering, the Horizon Summit, is just the public face. Zara's words came quickly, efficiently. I infiltrated the staff 3 days ago. Been gathering evidence on Operation Nexus. Which is? I don't know exactly, but it involves proprietary technology control on a massive scale, something that could affect billions of people. She pulled out her phone, showing Elon photographs of documents. They're planning market manipulation, infrastructure control, maybe worse. Elon studied the fragments of information, budget projections, in the trillions, technical specifications, unlike anything publicly available, and a timeline that extended 5 years into the future. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Because they're afraid of you. Zara pocketed her phone. I've watched them for days. They're perfectly coordinated until someone mentions your name or companies. Then they get nervous, change subjects. Noticed. It's more than just competitive tension. They want you discredited, maybe worse. She lowered her voice further. Last night, I overheard Marcus telling Vivian that the Musk problem needed to be permanently addressed. Elon considered this. How do I know you're really a journalist? This could be a setup. Smart. Zara handed him her actual press credentials, along with published articles bearing her byline. I specialize in tech accountability reporting. Been investigating these people for years. But this Nexus thing is bigger than anything I've seen. In the distance, Elon noticed security personnel emerging from the mansion, beginning their rounds. They're searching for you, he guessed. Zara nodded. Tonight's dinner is critical. They're finalizing some phase of the operation. I need to get back before they realize I'm gone, but we need to talk more. She backed toward the garden path. Be careful what you say or do. They're watching you specifically. What should I be looking for? Elon asked. Theo Barnes. He's not what he seems, and there's a laboratory somewhere on the grounds, not on any blueprint. That's where the prototype is kept. She turned to go, then added, Tonight at dinner, watch how they react if anyone mentions open-source technology or democratized innovation. That's what they're truly afraid of. She slipped away through the hedgerows, becoming invisible among the formal gardens. Elon remained for a moment, processing this new information. The pieces were starting to connect. The deliberate exclusion, the whispered conversations, the hostile undercurrent beneath the polite veneer. Whatever Operation Nexus involved, it represented the opposite of his own philosophy about technology and innovation. While he worked to make space travel accessible and electric vehicles mainstream, this consortium appeared to be planning technological control and restriction. As Tai Fizer, Elon walked back toward the mansion. He noticed cameras tracking his movement and security guards speaking quietly into their communications devices. The beautiful estate suddenly felt like a gilded cage, filled with predators pretending to be colleagues. At the main entrance, Vivian Blackwood waited, arms crossed. Enjoying our grounds, Mr. Musk? Her tone was pleasant, her eyes cold as winter. Dinner begins in 30 minutes. I've taken the liberty of seating you next to Theo Barnes. He's expressed interest in your perspective. The way she emphasized the last word sent a clear message. Theo was assigned to watch him, or worse, looking forward to it. Elon replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The game was escalating, but now, thanks to Zara, he finally understood the rules and the dangerous stakes involved. Dinner at Blackwood Estate was an elaborate affair. The dining room glowed with candlelight, illuminating crystal glasses and gold-rimmed china. A string quartet played softly in the corner as servers presented course after course of artfully arranged food. True to her word, Vivian had seated Elon beside Theo Barnes. On his other side sat an elderly man introduced as Raymond Fletcher, one of the original 12 Summit members, who had barely acknowledged Elon's greeting before turning to speak with Daphne Zhao. "Enjoying the summit so far?" Theo asked, his voice low and nervous. "It's been educational," Elon replied, studying the man more carefully now. Despite his expensive suit and prestigious seat at the table, Theo had the anxious demeanor of someone perpetually afraid of making a mistake. "First time is always overwhelming," Theo said, cutting his food into precise, identical pieces. "Took me 3 summits before I felt comfortable." "What exactly happens at these gatherings that requires so much comfort building?" Elon asked directly. Theo's fork paused mid-air. "Networking, planning, the usual." "Planning what, exactly?" Before Theo could answer, Vivian tapped her glass, drawing everyone's attention. "A toast," she announced, "to another successful year of guiding innovation responsibly." "To responsible guidance," the table echoed, raising glasses. "And to our newest project," Marcus added, "which will ensure stability for generations to come." Elon noticed how several eyes flicked toward him during this toast, measuring his reaction, testing him. "Speaking of innovation," Elon said, loud, enough for the table to hear, "I've been thinking about open-source approaches to quantum computing, making advanced technology accessible to all researchers rather than keeping it proprietary." The reaction was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus's knuckles whitened around his glass. Daphne's smile froze in place. Vivian recovered fastest. "A charming idealism," she said smoothly. "Though realistic minds understand that some technologies require careful stewardship." "Responsibility over access," agreed Raymond, speaking to Elon for the first time. "The public rarely understands what's truly in their best interest." The conversation quickly shifted to safer topics, but Elon had seen enough. Zara was right. Open access to technology was exactly what this group feared. Throughout dinner, Elon noticed Theo subtly angling his watch toward him during conversation. A recording device, perhaps? He'd seen enough corporate espionage attempts to recognize surveillance behaviors. "Interesting timepiece," Elon commented, causing Theo to hastily adjust his sleeve. "Family heirloom," Theo muttered, avoiding eye contact. When dinner finally ended around 11, Elon declined brandy in the smoking room, claiming exhaustion. In truth, he was wide awake and determined to use this opportunity to explore the mansion while most attendees were occupied. Back in his room, Elon waited 30 minutes, listening as footsteps and voices moved past his door toward the mansion's west wing. When silence finally settled, he slipped out, moving quietly through the dimly lit corridors. The massive library beckoned. 3 stories of rare books and first editions housed in an octagonal room with a domed ceiling. Elon had noticed earlier that Vivian and Marcus frequently disappeared into this room between sessions. It seemed as good a place as any to start investigating. Inside, moonlight filtered through high windows, casting long shadows across leather-bound volumes and marble busts. Elon moved methodically along the shelves, searching for anything unusual. Near the central fireplace, he noticed something odd. A section of books, perfectly aligned except for a single volume tilted slightly outward. When he pushed it, a soft click echoed in the quiet room. The bookcase beside the fireplace swung inward, silently, revealing a narrow passage beyond. A hidden door, straight out of a mystery novel, yet apparently very real in this house of secrets. Elon hesitated only briefly before entering the passage, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate. Rough stone steps leading downward. The air grew cooler as he descended, eventually reaching a modern metal door with an electronic keypad, jarringly out of place among the historic architecture. From beyond the door, voices drifted upward. Elon switched off his light and pressed, his ear against the cold metal. "Becoming a problem," a woman's voice, Vivian's, said firmly. "He's asking too many questions," came Marcus's response. Fletcher noticed it at dinner. "The prototype must be protected at all costs," Daphne added. "We've invested too much to risk exposure now." "Why not just bring him in?" A softer voice suggested, possibly Theo. "His technical expertise could be valuable." "Absolutely not." Vivian's response was immediate and harsh. "He can't be controlled. His entire business model opposes our objectives. Open access, consumer focus, public engagement, everything we've worked against." "The demonstration tomorrow proceeds as planned," Marcus said. "By week's end, we'll have secured enough support to move forward, regardless of potential disruptions." "And if he becomes more than a disruption?" Daphne asked. A heavy silence followed before Vivian answered, "Then we implement contingency protocols. No single individual can be allowed to interfere with Nexus." Elon backed away from the door, mind racing. They were clearly discussing him, planning something that required his exclusion, or worse. Whatever the prototype was, it represented the opposite of his vision for technology and innovation. As he carefully retraced his steps up the narrow passage, a sound from above froze him in place. Footsteps entering the library. Elon pressed himself against the wall as the hidden door swung open and someone entered the passage. He held his breath as a beam of light swept past, barely missing him in the shadows. The figure descended the stairs without noticing his presence, allowing Elon to slip out into the library and quietly close the hidden door behind him. Heart pounding, he made his way back to his room through the silent mansion. Inside, he immediately noticed something wrong. The laptop he'd left charging on the desk was now perfectly cantered on the surface. His suitcase had been moved slightly, and papers were arranged in a different order than he'd left them. Someone had searched his room. Moving to the window, Elon gazed out at the moonlit estate grounds. Near the edge of the forest, a dark figure stood motionless, looking up at the mansion. For a moment, their eyes seemed to meet across the distance. Then Elon blinked, and the figure vanished into the trees. Sleep would be impossible now. Tomorrow would bring more exclusion, more surveillance, and perhaps more danger. But it would also bring answers. One way or another, Elon would discover what Operation Nexus really was and why his presence threatened it so greatly. Dawn broke over Blackwood Estate, painting the mountains gold. Elon had spent most of the night researching the summit attendees on his tablet, looking for connections and patterns. The 12 core members shared directorships on various boards, had adjacent land holdings in 5 countries, and operated separate companies that somehow never directly competed with each other. It wasn't just a social club, it was a carefully constructed power network. At breakfast, he chose a small table near the window, watching the other guests through the reflection in the glass. Vivian and Marcus sat together, heads bent in conversation. Daphne Zhao checked her phone constantly, as if waiting for important news. Raymond Fletcher observed everything with shrewd eyes that belied his advanced age. "Mr. Musk." Elon turned, to find Theo Barnes standing beside his table, coffee cup in hand. "Mind if I join you?" Theo asked, his voice tight with what seemed like nervousness. "Be my guest," Elon replied, curious about this man's true role. Theo sat, arranging his napkin. With precise movements, his eyes darted around the room before settling on Elon. "You went exploring last night," he said quietly. Elon kept his expression neutral. "The mansion is fascinating. Historic architecture has always interested me." "The library in particular?" Theo raised an eyebrow. "With its unique features?" So they knew he'd found the passage. Elon decided to change tactics. "What's Operation Nexus, Theo? And why does my presence here threaten it?" Theo's hand trembled slightly as he set down his cup. "Meet me by the lake at noon. Come alone." He spoke so softly, Elon barely caught the words. Louder, he added, "The morning session starts in 20 minutes. Today's topic should interest you. Market disruption versus stability." Before Elon could respond, Theo stood and walked away, stopping briefly at Vivian's table before exiting the room. The morning session proved to be the most hostile yet. The topic: market control, necessary sacrifices for progress, seemed designed specifically to counter Elon's business philosophy. Marcus Sterling led the discussion with a presentation on responsible innovation containment, essentially arguing that new technologies should be restricted to established corporations with proven responsibility records. "Disruption for disruption's sake harms stable economies," Marcus declared, looking directly at Elon. "When newcomers enter established industries without proper appreciation for existing structures, the public ultimately suffers." When Elon finally got a chance to speak, he kept his response measured, despite his growing anger. "History shows that protected industries stagnate," he said. "True progress comes from challenging existing structures, not maintaining them for the benefit of current stakeholders." The room tensed at the challenge. Marcus laughed condescendingly. "This idealism might make for good press, but it ignores market realities," he said dismissively. "This is why some of us lead and others merely make headlines." Several attendees chuckled while journalists scribbled notes. Moderator Hayes quickly called on Daphne Zhao before Elon could respond. By the time the session ended, the message was clear. The consortium viewed Elon as a dangerous outsider whose approach to business threatened their carefully constructed control systems. At noon, Elon slipped away from the luncheon, making his way down to the lake. The water stretched like polished glass beneath the Montana sky, reflecting snow-capped peaks. A small wooden dock extended into the water, with Theo Barnes standing at its end, hands in pockets. Elon approached cautiously, aware this could be a trap. "I'm here." Theo turned, his eyes scanning the surroundings before focusing on Elon. "Were you followed?" "I don't think so." "Good." Theo's entire demeanor had changed, his nervous mannerisms replaced by focused alertness. "I don't have much time, so listen carefully." "Who are you really?" Elon asked. "Not who they think." Theo pulled out a small device and activated it. "Signal jammer. Gives us 3 minutes free from surveillance." "You're not a tech investor." "I am, actually. That part's true. But I'm also with the Federal Technology Oversight Division, a section of the government most people don't know exists." Elon studied him skeptically. "Prove it." Theo produced an ID card, unlike any government identification Elon had seen before. "We monitor technology developments that could threaten national security or economic stability. The Nexus Consortium has been on our radar for years." "What exactly is this consortium?" "A shadow organization comprised of the 12 wealthiest individuals from key industries. They've been coordinating market control for decades, but Operation Nexus represents something far more ambitious. Theo glanced at his watch. Most attendees here are simply wealthy people invited as cover. The real members are the 12 who sit closest to Vivian at every meal. And what's their objective? Total control of next-generation technology deployment? Theo's voice hardened. They're developing a quantum-based system called Nexus Prime that would allow them to monitor and potentially control all digital communications globally. That's impossible, Elon objected. The infrastructure requirements alone. They already control most of it through their various holdings. The missing pieces are being acquired through shell companies. Theo checked his device. They've been suppressing certain technological advances while developing their own versions, including several innovations your companies pioneered first. So my presence here is no accident. Vivian wanted you here to assess whether you could be brought into the consortium. Your companies represent technologies they need, but your public stance on open access makes you a threat. Theo looked over Elon's shoulder. They're planning to offer you membership tonight. If you refuse, they'll begin a coordinated effort to undermine your companies and reputation. They can try, Elon said with confidence, born from facing down critics for decades. Don't underestimate them. They've destroyed more careful men than you. Theo's device beeped softly. We're almost out of time. I've been working to gather evidence for an antitrust case, but I need access to their central server. It's in a secured room beneath the East Wing. The passage I found in the library leads to some kind of underground facility, Elon offered. Theo nodded. That's their meeting room. The server is nearby but requires biometric access from a core member. So what do you need from me? Keep them distracted tomorrow night. They're planning a demonstration of Nexus Prime for potential investors. All security will be focused on the main lab. That's when I'll make my move. Theo pocketed his device. Until then, play along. Act interested in their offer, but non-committal. Before Elon could ask more questions, movement near the tree line caught his attention. Daphne's head of security was walking along the path that led to the dock. Theo noticed, too, and smoothly shifted his posture, returning to his nervous persona. In a louder voice, he said, "Anyway, that's why fly fishing is such a meditative hobby. You should try it sometime." Elon followed his lead. "I might just do that. The water looks perfect here." As the security chief approached, Theo nodded politely and walked past him toward the mansion. The man stopped beside Elon, his presence clearly meant to intimidate. "Ms. Zhao was concerned when she couldn't find you at lunch, Mr. Musk," he said, his tone professional but cold. "Just getting some fresh air and perspective," Elon replied easily. "Beautiful property." "Indeed. Ms. Blackwood has requested your presence for the afternoon demonstration. I'm to escort you back." As they walked up the path, Elon processed Theo's revelations. If what he said was true, the Nexus Consortium represented everything Elon had fought against throughout his career. Controlled innovation, restricted access, and technology designed to monitor rather than empower. The question now was whether Theo could be trusted. Was he truly a government agent working against the consortium? Or was this another layer of the consortium's manipulation? Either way, Elon needed more information before deciding his next move. Back at the mansion, Vivian waited at the entrance, her smile not reaching her eyes. "There you are, Elon. Theo said you were admiring the lake. I hope you're finding our little retreat enlightening." "Increasingly so," Elon replied, matching her false warmth. "I'm beginning to understand exactly what the Horizon Summit is all about." Her smile faltered slightly before she regained control. "Wonderful. This afternoon's demonstration should make things even clearer." As they entered the mansion together, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into the most dangerous situation of his career, a realization that, strangely enough, felt almost familiar. After all, he'd built his life on challenging, powerful, entrenched interests who were determined to see him fail. The difference was that this time, the stakes might be much higher than just the success or failure of his companies. If Theo was right, the future of technological freedom itself hung in the balance. The afternoon demonstration took place in a modernized wing of the mansion, where a steel and glass laboratory had been constructed within the historic stone walls. Journalists and guests crowded into an observation area separated from the main lab by thick, transparent barriers. Inside, technicians in white coats moved between sleek workstations. "Welcome to Blackwood Innovation Labs," Vivienne announced, proudly. "From this facility, we coordinate research across 17 countries, developing technologies that will shape the next century." Elon studied the equipment visible through the glass. Much of it resembled standard quantum computing components, but several devices were completely unfamiliar. Black crystalline structures connected to what looked like advanced cooling systems. "What we're about to show you represents over a decade of privately funded research," Marcus added. "A quantum processing system that operates on principles beyond current scientific publishing." The lights dimmed as a holographic display activated in the center of the lab. A three-dimensional model appeared, showing what seemed to be a network architecture unlike anything Elon had seen publicly developed. "Quantum entanglement at room temperature," Daphne explained to the murmuring crowd, "allowing instantaneous communication and processing across any distance without traditional infrastructure limitations." Elon immediately grasped the implications. If they could maintain quantum entanglement without supercooling requirements, the processing capabilities would be virtually unlimited. Such technology could indeed monitor, perhaps even intercept, all digital communications globally. Tinkoyu. Prototype has already demonstrated successful operation across 3 continents, Vivienne continued. "By next year, we'll begin selective commercial deployment under consortium oversight." The demonstration proceeded with carefully controlled examples of the system's capabilities. Impressive, but also clearly sanitized for public consumption. Elon noticed what they weren't showing: actual network integration points, security protocols, or operational constraints. This was marketing, not true scientific disclosure. As the presentation concluded, Elon found Theo watching him from across the room, a meaningful glance that seemed to confirm everything he'd said by the lake. During the cocktail reception that followed, Vivienne approached Elon with 2 glasses of champagne, offering him one. "Impressive technology," Elon commented neutrally. "More than impressive," she replied. "Revolutionary. Which brings me to an important conversation we should have before tomorrow's closing session." "I'm listening." "The consortium has an opening. A 13th chair, so to speak." Her voice dropped. "Your vision and technical expertise would be valuable additions to our group, despite some philosophical differences. I'm curious what would be expected in such an arrangement," Elon said carefully, following Theo's advice to appear interested but non-committal: alignment, coordination, shared purpose. Vivienne sipped her champagne. "In return, you would have access to technologies decades ahead of public availability, not to mention certain regulatory accommodations for your various enterprises." Accommodations? Let's just say several consortium members have significant influence in regulatory bodies. Worldwide, approval processes can be expedited for aligned partners. The offer was as corrupt as it was tempting: insider access and regulatory manipulation in exchange for joining their control system. Before Elon could formulate a response that wouldn't reveal his true feelings, a commotion erupted near the Laboratory entrance, security personnel rushed past, hands on weapons. One of the white-coated scientists burst into the reception area, face pale with panic. The prototype! Someone's breached the secure housing! The room exploded into controlled chaos. Guests murmured in confusion, while security teams moved with practiced efficiency, securing exits and herding everyone into the main hall. Vivian's face transformed from polished charm to cold fury in an instant. All guests are to return to their rooms immediately, she announced. Security protocols require a complete property lockdown while we address this situation. Armed guards appeared at every doorway as Security Chief Ortega took command. Please proceed in an orderly fashion to your assigned quarters. Remain there until further notice. Any person found in unauthorized areas will be detained. As Elon was escorted back to his room, he caught sight of Theo being questioned by Marcus and Daphne. Theo's nervous mannerisms had returned full force, his hands shaking visibly as he responded to their interrogation. The hallways filled with security personnel as Elon reached his room. 2 guards took position outside his door after he entered, making it clear he was as much prisoner as guest now. From his window, Elon watched the estate grounds come alive with activity. Guards with dogs patrolled the perimeter while others conducted systematic searches of the outbuildings. Floodlights activated as dusk approached, illuminating the gardens and woods with harsh white light. They're really putting on a show, aren't they? The voice from behind made Elon spin around. Zara stood in his bathroom doorway, her server's uniform replaced by dark tactical clothing. "How did you get in here?" he demanded. Service tunnels run throughout the entire estate, Prohibition-era additions. She moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight from below. They're searching for something that wasn't actually stolen. What do you mean? The supposed break-in is a smokescreen. There are 2 prototypes. The real one is still secured in the main vault. What they're claiming was stolen is a decoy. She pulled out her phone, showing Elon's surveillance footage of the lab from just before the alarm. Watch, no one enters or exits, yet suddenly they're claiming a breach. So why fake a theft? Elon asked, though he was already forming theories. You. Zara put her phone away. They're planning to frame you. Plant evidence in your room, probably tonight, while everyone's distracted. By morning, they'll discover you attempted to steal their technology. That's why they're keeping me contained. Elon processed this information quickly. But how does that help them? It would create a public spectacle. Exactly what they want. Your reputation would be damaged beyond repair. Your company's stock would plummet. Meanwhile, the consortium members would be perfectly positioned to acquire controlling interests at fire sale prices. Zara glanced toward the door as footsteps passed in the hallway. Once they consolidate control, they'd reveal the recovered prototype as their own breakthrough innovation. The plan was elegant in its ruthlessness. Destroy him publicly, take over his companies cheaply, then use them to advance their own agenda. Classic corporate raiders, but operating on a scale most people couldn't imagine. We need to get out of here, Elon said. Not yet. We need evidence of what they're planning. Hard proof. Zara moved toward the bathroom. I'm going to access their secure server tonight. There's a maintenance entrance to the lab level that's minimally guarded during shift changes. Theo Barnes claims he's a government agent investigating the consortium, Elon told her. He's planning to access the server tomorrow night. Zara's expression darkened. Don't trust Barnes. He's been attending these summits for years. If he were genuinely investigating, he'd have acted already. So he's part of the consortium? Or playing both sides? Either way, he's not your ally. A soft beeping came from a device on Zara's wrist. "I need to go. Security sweep in 3 minutes. Create a distraction tomorrow during the morning session. Something to pull attention away from the East Wing. I'll contact you when I have what we need." She slipped back into the bathroom, and seconds later Elon heard the soft sound of a panel sliding closed. He was alone again, trapped in a luxurious room that now felt like a cell, while outside, guards continued their theatrical search for a prototype that had never actually been stolen. As night fell over Blackwood Estate, Elon sat at the desk, drafting contingency plans on paper rather than his potentially monitored devices. Whatever happened, tomorrow he needed to be prepared. Because one thing was now crystal clear. Vivian Blackwood and her consortium had no intention of letting him leave with his reputation, companies, or perhaps even his freedom intact. Morning arrived with a knock on Elon's door. A security team stood outside, faces impassive. "Mr. Musk, your presence is requested in the main conference room immediately," the lead guard stated. No breakfast invitation, no preteens of hospitality. The game had shifted to its next phase. Elon was escorted through hallways now staffed with security personnel at every intersection. Other guests watched wide-eyed as he passed, whispering behind hands. Word had clearly spread. The conference room had been rearranged. Instead of the circular table, a podium stood at one end, with rows of chairs facing it. Journalists filled the back rows, while summit attendees occupied the front. A space in the center remained conspicuously empty, a seat of judgment awaiting its accused. Marcus Sterling stood at the podium, his expression grave. Vivian sat nearby, flanked by Daphne Zhao and Raymond Fletcher. The core consortium members formed a unified front, their faces masks of disapproval and disappointed concern. "Mr. Musk," Marcus called out as Elon entered, "please take the central seat." As Elon sat, he noted the strategic positioning. Every journalist could clearly see his face, while cameras had unobstructed views from multiple angles. This wasn't a hearing, it was theater, carefully staged for maximum public impact. "Last night," Marcus began, addressing the room, "a security breach occurred in our research facility. Our prototype quantum communication processor, representing billions in private investment and years of development, was accessed without authorization." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Elon maintained a neutral expression, aware that every reaction would be scrutinized and likely misrepresented later. "Security protocols immediately identified the breach," Marcus continued. "While we initially believed the prototype had been physically removed, our technical team has confirmed that it remains on site, though critical data was compromised." Elon noted the subtle shift in narrative, adjusting from physical theft to data breach, likely because planting an actual prototype in his possession would be too difficult to explain. "Our investigation has produced disturbing evidence." Marcus nodded to a technician who activated a large display screen. "Security footage from the laboratory corridor at 7:42 p.m. yesterday. The screen showed grainy footage of someone entering a key code at a laboratory door. The figure's face remained turned away from the camera, but the height and build could plausibly match Elon's. The timestamp matched a period when he'd been in his room, or at least when he was supposed to be. Additionally, Marcus continued, "We've recovered access logs showing laboratory systems were accessed using executive credentials assigned to a terminal in Mr. Musk's guest suite. This, Elon knew, was outright fabrication. He had made no such access attempts. When questioned, Mr. Musk's security escort confirmed he requested privacy for urgent business calls during the exact time frame of the breach." Marcus looked directly at Elon, his expression a perfect blend of regret and accusation. We find these coincidences deeply troubling. The room had grown silent, all eyes now fixed on Elon. He understood the trap perfectly. Each denial would only entangle him further in a web of manufactured evidence. Mr. Musk. Vivian spoke now, her voice carrying perfectly in the hushed room. Would you care to respond to these findings? As Elon stood, he noticed Theo Barnes watching intently from the side of the room, his expression unreadable. Zara was nowhere to be seen. Interesting timing, Elon said calmly. Just hours after I was offered membership in your consortium, with the condition of alignment to your objectives, you suddenly discover evidence of corporate espionage. A ripple of surprise moved through the journalists. This clearly wasn't the defensive response they'd expected. The offer of membership was extended as a courtesy, Vivian replied smoothly. Your response appears to confirm our concerns about your methods. My methods have always been transparent, Elon countered. Unlike Operation Nexus, which you've gone to extraordinary lengths to keep hidden. Marcus stepped forward quickly. We're not here to discuss proprietary business strategies. We're addressing a serious security breach. A fabricated breach, Elon interrupted, designed to discredit the one person at this summit who advocates for open technology access instead of controlled deployment. Several journalists were now taking furious notes, their expressions indicating this confrontation had veered from the consortium's script. These are serious allegations, Mr. Musk, Daphne Zhao interjected. Do you have any evidence to support such claims? Before Elon could respond, the conference room doors burst open. Ortega, the head of security, strode in and whispered urgently to Vivienne. Her composed facade cracked momentarily, genuine alarm flashing across her face. We need to temporarily adjourn this session, she announced, standing abruptly. A security situation requires immediate attention. As the room erupted in confused conversations, Elon was quickly surrounded by 4 guards. You're to return to your room under escort, Ortega informed him. This time, sir, please remain there. Back in his suite, the door locked audibly behind him. The guard's footsteps retreated rapidly down the hallway, clearly called to whatever situation had interrupted the meeting. Elon moved quickly to the window. On the far side of the estate, security personnel were rushing toward the research wing. Something had gone wrong with their carefully orchestrated frame-up. Looking around the room, Elon spotted his laptop, now positioned differently than he'd left it. They'd been in his room again. Taking a chance, he opened it and found it surprisingly functional. Though likely monitored, using techniques from his engineering background, Elon began disassembling the desk lamp, alarm clock, and other electronic devices in the room. Within 15 minutes, he had constructed a crude signal jammer from the components, activating it to create a temporary blind spot in their surveillance. As if on cue, a panel in the bathroom wall slid open. Zara emerged, her face scratched and clothing torn. "They're onto us," she said without preamble. "I accessed the server, but triggered a secondary alarm system. Only got partial data before they locked everything down." "What did you find?" Elon asked. "Enough to confirm everything," she replied grimly. "The technology demonstration was real. They've actually built it, but they've hidden the true application. It's not just for communication. When fully deployed, Nexus Prime could theoretically access any networked system globally, including satellites," Elon realized, "autonomous vehicles, power grids, everything." Zara nodded. "The consortium's been planning this for years. They call it the Reset, a complete restructuring of global technology access, with them controlling the master keys." She pulled a small drive from her pocket. "I've transmitted copies to secure locations, but we need to get out of here. They'll realize soon that the security breach was real this time." Elon turned off his makeshift jammer. First, I need to understand why they see me specifically as such a threat. There are plenty of tech advocates they could have targeted instead. Zara's expression changed. That's actually the most interesting part. According to their files, your research team unwittingly solved a quantum stabilization problem 3 years ago. The same barrier that was preventing Nexus Prime from functioning at scale. The superconductor cooling system we developed for the Neural Interface Project, Elon realized. They need my technology to make their system work. Exactly. They couldn't just steal it without raising questions. But if they discredit you and then acquire your companies during the stock crash, they get everything legally, with no one looking too closely at how they suddenly overcame their technical obstacles. Elon's mind raced ahead. We need to expose this before they can regroup. A commotion in the hallway signaled their time was running out. Shouted commands and running footsteps approached rapidly. Too late for a quiet exit, Zara said, moving back toward the hidden passage. Meet me at the boathouse at midnight if you can get away. If not, I'll release everything to selected journalists tomorrow. As the panel slid closed behind her, Elon quickly dismantled his signal jammer, hiding the components moments before his door burst open and security flooded into the room. 6 guards entered Elon's room, led by Ortega himself. Their expressions were grim, hands resting on holstered weapons. Mr. Musk, additional security measures are being implemented, Ortega announced. You'll remain here under direct supervision until authorities arrive. What authorities? Elon asked calmly, noting the 2 guards methodically searching his room. Local and federal, Ortega replied. Industrial espionage across state lines involves multiple jurisdictions. So they were accelerating their timeline, moving to involve law enforcement before he could mount a defense. Clever. I'd like to contact my lawyer, Elon said. Communications are temporarily restricted due to security protocols, Ortega stated flatly. Ms. Blackwood will address your concerns shortly. As if summoned by her name, Vivian appeared in the doorway, flanked by Marcus and Daphne. Her usual poise had hardened into cold fury. Someone accessed our central server 20 minutes ago, she said without preamble. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? I've been in this room since your guards escorted me here, Elon replied truthfully. As they can? Confirm. Vivian studied him, clearly suspecting deception, but unable to prove it. Then, perhaps you worked with an accomplice? The journalist, perhaps? Zara Chen has gone missing from the staff quarters. So, they knew about Zara. Elon kept his expression neutral. I don't control the movements of your staff. She's not staff, Marcus interjected. Background checks confirmed that this morning. She used forged credentials to infiltrate the summit. Whoever she is, Vivian continued. Security footage shows her accessing restricted areas yesterday, shortly after being seen delivering coffee to you. Elon shrugged. Many people served me coffee yesterday. Daphne Zhao stepped forward, her scientific precision evident in her measured tone. The server breach targeted specific files, technical specifications related to quantum entanglement. Processors, the same technology your companies have been quietly researching, along with dozens of other tech firms, Elon countered. Quantum computing isn't exactly a secret field. Our implementation is unique, Daphne insisted, and now compromised. Search his room thoroughly, Vivian ordered the guards. Every electronic device, every paper, every hiding place. As the search intensified, Elon was directed to sit in a chair by the window. From this position, he could see increased security patrols on the grounds and what appeared to be helicopters approaching in the distance. Time was running short for whatever plan Zara had in mind. The search yielded nothing, of course. Zara had taken the only evidence with her. Frustration was evident on Vivian's face as the guards reported their findings. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more appropriate, Marcus suggested meaningfully. Vivian nodded. Have Mr. Musk escorted to the conference room. The presentation will proceed as scheduled, with some modifications. As Elon was led through the mansion, he noted that most guests had been confined to the main hall, where security personnel monitored them closely. Journalists huddled in corners, phones and cameras confiscated, their expressions ranging from confused to outraged at this treatment. The conference room had been transformed again. Now it resembled something between a courtroom and a corporate boardroom, with the 12 consortium members seated in an arc facing a single chair. Behind them, large screens displayed technical diagrams and security footage. Once Elon was seated, in the isolated chair, Vivian addressed the room. For those just joining us, we face an unprecedented situation. Evidence suggests Mr. Musk has engaged in corporate espionage, attempting to steal proprietary technology. Further, we believe he worked with an infiltrator who has accessed classified server data. You have no proof of either accusation, Elon stated calmly. We have substantial circumstantial evidence, Marcus countered. And more importantly, motive. Your companies would benefit enormously from our quantum breakthrough. Why would I steal technology that's already being developed independently by my own research teams? Elon asked, addressing the logical flaw in their accusation. Vivian smiled coldly. Not stealing, Mr. Musk. Sabotaging. Your business model depends on convincing the public that technology should be unrestricted. Our controlled deployment approach threatens that narrative. So they were pivoting from theft to sabotage, a narrative that better fit their purposes but was equally false. Raymond Fletcher, the eldest consortium member, spoke up. You've built your reputation on disruption, on breaking established systems. Did you really expect us to believe you came here simply to participate in polite discussion? Elon looked around the room, meeting each consortium member's gaze directly. I came because I was invited. The question is, why invite me if you consider me such a threat? An uncomfortable silence followed. The consortium members exchanged glances, a wordless communication passing between them. Unexpectedly, it was Theo Barnes who broke the silence, stepping forward from where he'd been standing against the wall. Tell him the truth, Vivian, he said, his nervous demeanor suddenly gone. Tell him why you really brought him here. Vivian's expression flickered between surprise and warning. Theo, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. Theo insisted, before this charade goes any further. The room's attention shifted to this unexpected confrontation. Elon watched carefully, unsure if this was another scripted moment or a genuine fracture in the consortium's united front. Fine, Vivian finally said. Mr. Musk, your presence here was never about potential membership. Your companies have developed cooling technology essential for scaling our quantum system, technology we've been unable to replicate despite considerable effort. So you did intend to steal my technology, Elon concluded. Not steal, Marcus corrected. Acquire. Legally, through stock purchase after your reputation and company valuations were appropriately adjusted. The irony, Daphne added, is that your cooling system was a tangential development, something your teams created for neural interface experiments. You probably don't even realize its true significance. Elon did now, thanks to Zara's information, but he kept that knowledge to himself. And Operation Nexus? He asked. What's the real purpose of this quantum system you're building? The consortium members exchanged glances again. This time, it was Raymond Fletcher who answered. Control, Mr. Musk. The digital world has become dangerously chaotic. Governments are ineffective at regulation. Corporations pursue profit without concern for consequences. Someone must establish order. By monitoring all global communications, Elon stated. By creating oversight, Vivian corrected. Guiding technological development responsibly, rather than allowing the free-for-all that currently exists. With you 12 deciding what's responsible, Elon noted. Convenient that your definition aligns with your financial interests. Marcus leaned forward. We've spent decades building industries, understanding consequences. Who better to guide technology's future? The public, Elon replied simply. Open innovation, distributed development, transparent objectives. Everything your consortium opposes. Vivian sighed with theatrical patience. This philosophical debate is pointless. The presentation begins in 1 hour. Your role in it has changed, but the outcome remains the same. Nexus Prime will proceed, with or without your cooperation. As Elon was escorted back to a holding room, he realized the confrontation had yielded exactly the confession he needed. Direct confirmation of their plan, spoken in front of multiple witnesses. If Zara had successfully transmitted the server data, they now had enough evidence to expose the entire operation. The only question was whether he would be free to use it, or if the consortium's power would ensure this evidence never reached the public. The next 3 hours passed in tense isolation. Elon remained in a small conference room, guarded by 2 security personnel who refused to answer questions. From his window, he observed increased activity outside. Black SUVs arriving. Men in suits who didn't match the previous guest list. Conversations conducted with urgent gestures. Something had changed in the consortium's plans. Whether due to Zara's data breach or some other factor, they were accelerating their timeline. Shortly before noon, the door opened to reveal Theo Barnes. "I've been sent to brief you," he said, dismissing the guards with a gesture that implied authority. When they were alone, he spoke quickly. The situation has evolved. Vivian has moved up the investor presentation. Key technology journalists have been invited specifically to witness your disgrace. And where do you stand in all this? Elon asked directly. Whose side are you really on? Theo's expression remained unreadable. I serve the interests of technological progress. Sometimes that requires complex positioning. That's not an answer. It's the only one you get for now. Theo checked his watch. The presentation begins in 30 minutes. You'll be brought in midway through. Be prepared for aggressive questioning designed to provoke an emotional response. And if I refuse to participate in this charade, then the narrative proceeds without your input. Vivian has prepared statements attributed to you. Admissions of guilt, apologetic platitudes. Your silence would be interpreted as confirmation. Elon considered his options. So my choices are to attend and be framed, or not attend and still be framed. Unless you can offer something they want more than your destruction, Theo suggested. They want my cooling technology and control of your company's other innovations, Theo added. They fear what they can't direct. Your approach to technology threatens their entire model. Before Elon could respond, the door opened again. Ortega entered with 4 guards. It's time, he announced. The presentation is ready to begin. Elon was escorted through the mansion's grand corridors to the main conference center. The scene that greeted him was more elaborate than expected. The room had been transformed into a corporate showcase, with the circular table reinstated at the center, surrounded by tiered seating filled with new arrivals, technology investors, journalists from major publications, and representatives from regulatory agencies. A red carpet led to the table where the 12 consortium members already sat, an empty 13th chair conspicuously placed opposite Vivienne. Camera crews positioned along the walls captured every angle of this carefully orchestrated event. As Elon entered, conversations hushed. All eyes turned to watch him walk the gauntlet of scrutiny toward the isolated chair. The message was clear. PT would face judgment before this carefully selected audience. Vivienne Blackwood stood as he approached, her business attire now even more formal, projecting authority and gravitas. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the room, "thank you for joining this special session on such short notice. Today marks a pivotal moment in technological history, both for what we will reveal and, unfortunately, for what we must address." Elon took his seat, noting that each place at the table had a microphone and a small screen. His was the only position without these tools, another subtle reinforcement of his outsider status. "We had intended this gathering to be a celebration of collaborative innovation," Vivienne continued. "However, recent events have forced us to confront a disturbing reality: industrial espionage at the highest level." Marcus Sterling took over, his deep voice carrying authority. "For those who haven't been briefed, yesterday evening our security systems detected unauthorized access to proprietary research. Subsequent investigation revealed a coordinated attempt to compromise Nexus Prime, the quantum communication system. We'll be demonstrating today." A murmur rippled through the audience. Several journalists typed rapidly on tablets. Evidence points to involvement by Elon Musk, who was invited to this summit as a potential collaborator, Daphne added, her scientific credibility lending weight to the accusation. "We've uncovered communications suggesting his intent was never collaboration, but rather sabotage of a system that challenges his market position." Raymond Fletcher, the elder statesman of the group, shook his head sadly. "It's always disappointing when visionaries resort to undermining competitors rather than innovating. We expected better." One by one, each consortium member added to the IBP narrative, building a compelling case of evidence against Elon. Fabricated communications, circumstantial connections, and logical-sounding motives. The performance was masterful, clearly rehearsed and refined to maximum effect. Throughout their presentations, images and documents flashed on large screens surrounding the room. Security footage, email excerpts, technical diagrams comparing Nexus technology to patents held by Elon's companies. Context was carefully manipulated to suggest impropriety where none existed. Journalists' expressions shifted from initial skepticism to growing conviction. Whatever evidence Zara had transmitted hadn't reached these people, or hadn't convinced them if it had. Finally, after nearly an hour of systematic character assassination, Vivienne turned her attention directly to Elon. "Mr. Musk, you've heard the evidence presented. This is your opportunity to address these serious allegations before we proceed with legal measures." The room fell silent. Cameras focused on his face. Pens hovered over notepads. This moment would define the public narrative. Either his defense or his damning silence would lead tomorrow's headlines. Elon looked around the room, taking in the faces of the world's most powerful people and the journalists who shaped public opinion. He had faced criticism and attacks throughout his career, but never a coordinated takedown of this magnitude. For a moment, he considered exposing everything: the consortium's true plans, their attempted frame-up, Zara's findings, but without hard evidence immediately at hand, it would be his word against 12 of the world's most credible business leaders. Instead, he stood slowly, commanding the room's attention through presence rather than volume. "I could talk about the frame-up," he began calmly. "I could detail the conspiracy to acquire my companies through manufactured scandal. I could even present the evidence I've gathered about Operation Nexus and its true purpose. Tension visibly rippled through the consortium members. Several reached for their phones, likely sending urgent messages to security. But that's not what matters today, Elon continued. What matters is a simple question I've asked myself every morning for decades. How will what I do today benefit humanity tomorrow? He paused, making deliberate eye contact with each consortium member before turning to address the wider audience. The technology being developed here isn't just about communication, it's about control. Quantum-based systems designed to monitor and potentially intercept all digital information globally. The consolidation of technological oversight in the E8 hands of 12 individuals who believe they should determine how innovation proceeds. Murmurs spread through the journalists. Several began making calls or sending messages, confirming aspects of his statement with outside sources. I was invited here because my companies developed cooling technology they couldn't replicate, technology essential for their system to function at scale. When I wouldn't willingly join their consortium, they created this elaborate scenario to discredit me, crash my stock, and acquire my companies at fire sale prices. Vivian stood abruptly. These are desperate accusations from someone facing legitimate evidence. Are they? Elon challenged. Then let's examine the evidence properly. Let independent experts review the security footage timestamps for manipulation. Let forensic analysts examine the communications attributed to me. Let technical specialists compare the patent applications. Several regulatory representatives in the audience exchanged glances. This public challenge wasn't part of the consortium's script. Marcus attempted damage control. We welcome appropriate investigation through proper channels. But this presentation was intended to showcase Nexus Prime, not entertain conspiracy theories. Then showcase it, Elon interrupted. Demonstrate exactly what it can do. Not just the sanitized version you prepared for investors, but its full capabilities. Show everyone how it interacts with global communication systems, financial networks, and infrastructure control protocols. The challenge hung in the air. Daphne glanced nervously at Vivian, who maintained her composed facade despite the derailment of her carefully planned narrative. Our technological demonstration will proceed shortly, Vivian said smoothly. But first, security will escort Mr. Musk from the premises. His disruptive behavior only confirms our concerns. On cue, guards moved toward Elon. But before they reached him, the doors to the conference room burst open. Federal agents entered, led by a woman in a dark suit who immediately displayed credentials. Federal Technology Oversight, she announced. This demonstration is suspended pending investigation of potential violations of national security protocols. Behind her, more agents entered carrying electronic equipment and documents. Among them walked Zara Chen, no longer in disguise, but professionally dressed with official credentials visible. Vivian's composure finally cracked. This is a private event on private property. You have no jurisdiction. We have both jurisdiction and warrants, the lead agent replied, handing documents to Vivian. Based on evidence suggesting unauthorized development of surveillance technology with potential national security implications. As agents spread throughout the room, securing exits and equipment, Theo Barnes calmly walked to stand beside the federal team, his nervous persona completely gone. Agent Barnes has been investigating the Nexus Consortium for 16 months, the lead agent explained to the stunned room. The evidence collected, combined with data provided by Ms. Chen and statements made in this room today, justify immediate intervention. Elon watched as realization spread across the faces of the consortium members. Their carefully constructed power structure was crumbling in real time, exposed not through dramatic confrontation, but through the methodical application of law enforcement, they had believed themselves above. Journalists who moments ago had been prepared to report Elon's disgrace were now capturing a very different story. One of shadowy power, attempted technological control, and timely intervention. As Marcus Sterling was led away for questioning, he paused beside Elon. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. "The world needs direction, not chaos." "The world needs innovation that serves humanity," Elon replied, "not technology that controls it." For the first time since arriving at Blackwood Estate, Elon felt the balance of power shift. The consortium members who had dismissed and excluded him now faced questions they couldn't easily deflect. The technology they had developed in secret would be examined in the light. But as federal agents continued their methodical process, Elon knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, ensuring that quantum computing and other advanced technologies develop to empower rather than restrict, to connect rather than surveil. The roundtable that had been designed for his public humiliation had instead become the stage for the consortium's exposure. Whatever happened next would reshape not just his company's futures, but potentially the direction of technological development itself. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of statements, documentation, and legal proceedings. Federal agents transformed Blackwood Estate into an impromptu investigation headquarters, conducting interviews in separate rooms and securing electronic evidence throughout the property. Elon provided his account multiple times to different authorities: technology, oversight officials, antitrust investigators, and national security analysts. Each seemed concerned with different aspects of the consortium's activities, from market manipulation to unauthorized surveillance development. By evening, most of the journalists and guests had been debriefed and permitted to leave, though under confidentiality agreements regarding specific technologies they might have observed. The stories they would publish would be carefully vetted. National security implications requiring certain details be withheld temporarily. Elon found himself in the estate's library, the hidden passage now sealed with official tape. Agent Cassandra, Lynn, the woman who had led the raid, sat across from him, reviewing notes on a specialized tablet. "Your statement matches Agent Barnes's intelligence remarkably well," she commented, looking up. "Particularly impressive considering you were operating without our background information." "I've dealt with corporate espionage before," Elon replied, "though never quite at this scale." "The Nexus Consortium has been on our radar for years," Lynn explained. "But they're exceptionally careful. Private property, private funding, legitimate seeming, research. We needed concrete evidence of their true intentions, which Theo, Agent Barnes, was gathering. Along with Ms. Chen." Lynn set down her tablet. Her journalism background provided access our agents couldn't achieve. When she approached us 3 months ago with preliminary evidence, we coordinated our efforts. "So Zara was working with you from the beginning?" "Not officially. She came to us after uncovering financial patterns, suggesting market manipulation. We couldn't formally engage a civilian, but we didn't discourage her investigation." Elon nodded, pieces falling into place. "And you allowed her to contact me because I was a wild card the consortium hadn't accounted for?" "Precisely." Lynn's professional demeanor softened slightly. Agent Barnes had infiltrated their inner circle, but couldn't access the central server. Without raising suspicions, we needed a distraction. "Happy to oblige," Elon said, with a hint of irony. Lynn checked her watch. "The final roundtable begins in 30 minutes. Are you prepared?" "Depends what's expected. Just your account of events. In your own words, without our coaching. The documentation and technical evidence will speak for itself. And the consortium members will be present with counsel." This isn't a trial, Mr. Musk. It's a preliminary hearing to establish the scope of our investigation moving forward. As Elon returned to the conference center, he noted how dramatically the atmosphere had changed. The opulent showcase had been stripped back to functional necessity. Where promotional displays had stood, evidence boards now displayed technical, diagrams, and financial flowcharts. The circular table remained, but now surrounded by recording equipment and legal representatives. Journalists were permitted to return for this session, though a much smaller group, primarily technology and business specialists rather than general news media. Each had been thoroughly briefed on reporting restrictions regarding classified technologies. The consortium members entered as a group, no longer projecting confidence and control, but maintaining dignified composure despite the circumstances. Their lawyers clustered behind them, whispering urgent advice. Vivian Blackwood's expression remained impassive, though the strain showed in the tightness around her eyes. Agent Lin opened the session with a formal statement outlining the preliminary findings. Evidence of market manipulation, unauthorized, surveillance technology development, and potential antitrust violations. She explicitly noted that all parties were entitled to presumption of innocence and that the investigation would proceed according to established legal protocols. As various technical experts presented initial assessments of the Nexus Prime system, Elon observed the journalists' reactions. Many were clearly struggling to reconcile the consortium's respected public images with the evidence being presented. The technical capabilities of the system itself drew expressions of both awe and alarm, recognition of its revolutionary potential, alongside concern for its possible applications. When it was Elon's turn to speak, the room fell silent. All recording devices activated simultaneously, capturing what would likely become the most widely quoted portion of these proceedings. He stood, looking around at the faces of the world's most powerful people, all waiting for him to defend himself or condemn them. The narrative expected by both sides was one of righteous vindication or bitter accusation. Instead, Elon began quietly, "I could talk about the frame-up, the conspiracy, or the stolen technologies. I have evidence of all of it." The room stirred nervously. But that's not what matters today. He paused, making eye contact with each consortium member. What matters is a simple question I've asked myself every morning for decades. How will what I do today benefit humanity tomorrow? The room shifted uncomfortably as he continued. Technology isn't inherently good or evil. It's a tool, powerful beyond anything we've created before, but still just a tool. The critical factor is who controls it, and to what end. Elon turned to address the journalists directly now. The quantum system you've heard described today is real. Its capabilities are not exaggerated. It could indeed form the backbone of a global monitoring network with unprecedented access to digital communications. He glanced at the consortium members before continuing. Where we disagree is not on the technology's potential, but on who should control it. My vision has always been open source, democratized, with distributed oversight preventing any single entity, government, corporation, or individual, from gaining disproportionate power. Vivian finally broke her silence. A naive and dangerous approach. Open-source quantum systems without centralized control would lead to chaos, financial systems vulnerable, infrastructure at risk, privacy non-existent. Or it could lead to unprecedented innovation, Elon countered, collaborative solutions to problems we haven't even identified yet. The wisdom of millions rather than the control of 12. A philosophical disagreement, Vivian dismissed. Not evidence of wrongdoing. The frame-up and attempted corporate takeover went well beyond philosophy, Elon noted, before returning to his central point. But again, That's not what matters most today." He paused, allowing tension to build in the room. "What matters is that while you were plotting against me, my team was pursuing a different path. We've known about quantum entanglement communication for years, developed alongside our neural interface projects. The cooling system you coveted was just one component." Murmurs spread through the audience as Vivian leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What are you saying?" she demanded. "I'm saying that, for the past 18 months, my team has been developing our own quantum communication system, Nexus Reach. Unlike Nexus Prime, it's designed with distributed architecture, open-source protocols, and built-in safeguards preventing surveillance misuse." Marcus Sterling scoffed. "Impossible. The infrastructure requirements alone are substantial," Elon agreed, "which is why we leveraged existing satellite networks, ground stations, and data centers through partnership agreements rather than acquisition. Collaboration rather than control." He looked directly at Vivian now. "While you were assessing whether to recruit or destroy me, we were completing final testing. And as of this morning, the first phase of Nexus Reach has been released worldwide under Creative Commons licensing." The revelation left the consortium members visibly stunned. Several reached for phones, likely contacting their technical teams for confirmation. Journalists frantically made calls, verifying the announcement. "You can't have," Daphne whispered, her scientific mind clearly calculating the implications. "The quantum stabilization issues alone were solved 3 years ago," Elon confirmed. "The same solution you attempted to acquire through corporate espionage. The difference is, we've made it freely available to research institutions globally." The room erupted in overlapping conversations as the full impact became clear. Security guards received messages on their earpieces and looked uncertainly toward Agent Lin, who calmly observed the unfolding scene. Vivienne's face had drained of color as market alerts appeared on several screens around the room. Her company's stock plummeting while Elon's soared on news of the breakthrough. The carefully constructed power structure she had spent decades building was collapsing in real time. The tension broke when Agent Barnes stood and formally placed handcuffs on Marcus Sterling, stating, "Marcus Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, market manipulation, and industrial espionage." More agents entered the room, moving to detain other core consortium members. Raymond Fletcher's distinguished facade crumbled as he was read his rights. Daphne Zhao demanded her lawyer as agents secured her devices. Amid the controlled chaos, a technology journalist approached Elon, asking the question now on everyone's mind. "Why did you choose this path? With this technology, you could have established market dominance for decades. Why make it open source?" Elon's answer, broadcast live and subsequently quoted in every major publication, sent shockwaves through the business world and transformed the conversation about wealth, power, and innovation. Because revolutions aren't led by those who hoard power, they're sparked by those willing to give it away. In the hours that followed, as federal agents continued processing evidence and escorting consortium members to waiting vehicles, Elon found himself standing on the mansion's front steps with Zara. "Quite a story you've got now," he commented, as she reviewed notes on her phone. "The biggest of my career," she agreed. "Though half of it will be classified for years. Focus on the technology's potential, not the conspiracy," Elon suggested. "That's what matters long-term." "Speaking of long-term," Zara said, looking up from her device, "what happens next? You've completely disrupted the global technology landscape." Again, Elon looked out over Blackwood Estate. The property that had been designed as a symbol of concentrated power now transformed into a site of its dismantling. "Distributed quantum networks will change everything," he said. Not just communication, but computing, research, security, the frameworks our digital society is built on. Sounds like enough to keep you busy for a while, Zara observed. Actually, I've been working on something even bigger, Elon replied, a familiar gleam returning to his eyes. Something that will make today seem like a footnote. Zara's journalistic instincts visibly sparked. Care to give me a hint? Elon smiled. Considering the next frontier his teams were already exploring, technologies beyond quantum computing that could fundamentally transform human capability itself. Want a hint? He asked. But before he could reveal this next world-changing innovation, Agent Lin called him back inside for final statements, leaving Zara and the world to wonder what could possibly follow such a seismic shift in power. Whatever it was, if history was any indication, it would once again challenge the established order, transferring power from the few to the many. Because while the quiet billionaire had been ignored at the roundtable, his revolution had already begun. The one thing that had shocked everyone wasn't just what he said. It was what he had already done while they weren't listening. Thank you for listening to The Quiet Revolution. I'm curious, where in the world are you enjoying this story from? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed Elon's journey from ignored outsider to game changer, please tap that like button to help more people discover this story. Every like spreads positivity and helps our storytelling community grow. Don't miss future stories by subscribing to our channel. We share new inspirational tales every week about people who changed the world by thinking differently. And if you're ready for another captivating story right now, click on the video appearing on your screen. It's about another visionary who shocked everyone with an unexpected move that changed their industry forever. Remember, sometimes the quietest voices have the most powerful things to say. Until next time.